Hey, Inside Crypto people, welcome back to another Bitcoin Weekly. It is good to be back and actually fully rested. I've had 2 good days of sleep, so I'm feeling a lot better after last week's rushed episode, but lots of headlines today. Bitcoin was almost at that all-time high this morning here in Taiwan, and then it went down a bit. I will talk about that price later. Some news came out as well that 97% of Bitcoin wallets are in the green. Basically, they have made a profit due to the recent Bitcoin price rally. The BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, are talking about using blockchain to de-dollarize, as they say, and we'll talk about the impacts and ideas behind some of that. We also have to talk about MicroStrategy. MicroStrategy, of course, being in the profit, being in the green with regards to their Bitcoin holdings, have said they're going to offer $600 million in bonds so that they can buy even more Bitcoin. And our last two stories for the day are basically that we're going to talk about the economy as usual, some sort of macro look at what's inflation doing, what are the various equivalent of the Federal Reserves around the world doing, what's the stock market doing. And our final story for today is a Super Tuesday, right? Super Tuesday is a huge day in the United States, and of course the United States and who is the president does affect the rest of the world in some ways. But Super Tuesday, for those of you who don't know, is a really big day where politics comes into play, where it's all about voting. But the connection with crypto is that's where crypto PACs and special organizations are going to be funding money into elections to promote pro-crypto candidates. So without further ado, let's get started and talk about today's first story. All right, so today's first story, we have to talk about Bitcoin's price, $66,815.92, up 2.5%. As I mentioned before, I looked up on CoinGecko, and again, for those of you who don't know, this is CoinGecko's website, that Bitcoin's all-time high was about $68,000 and change in its history, which happened in 2021. So it was really close this morning, like a few $100s off. And then it went down to 66,000. Now it's starting to come up again. I looked for stories about why the price has come down. I didn't see anything very specific with regards to that. Again, these sort of things happen, so nothing is a straight line going upwards. There are corrections. There are people who are, when Bitcoin hits a certain price, they're going to sell. They're going to sell and take some profit and maybe buy some altcoins or maybe save it for when Bitcoin does take some major correction down. I was watching a video by Jason Pizzino, another sort of crypto influencer, and he was stating that he thinks, again, his opinion, and none of this is financial advice, that we can expect corrections, but he doesn't expect anything more than a 2.5% to 5% correction over the next few months. Again, looking at a wide swath of Bitcoin stories, most stories, if not all the stories, are very positive, very rosy when it comes to price predictions. I'll let you guys look up those for yourselves. There are a few people, again, and the negative stories just revolve around volatility and the price corrections, right? And of course, people are asking, should you buy Bitcoin at the moment or at its current price? And I'll let you guys comment down below in the video. So let's jump into today's first story. All right, today's first story is Bitcoin rally leaves more than 97% of addresses in profit, blockchain data show. Most Bitcoin addresses bought coins at prices lower than the going market rate, according to Into the Block. So Into the Block, again, an episode, we interviewed one of the researchers there, 𝔻𝕗𝕗𝕗, at one point. Check out that episode. So I think it makes a lot of sense. If you think about the FOMO, fear of missing out, you think about the heights of when your friends and family and cousins and aunties were like, should I buy Bitcoin? Should I buy Bitcoin? Should I get into crypto? Those were the times where people were buying Bitcoin and the prices then were maybe $40,000, $50,000 or maybe less. And some people bought at the lows, right? But some people bought at 16, 17, 18, 19. And some people have been buying continuously. To me, this idea of 97% of addresses makes a lot of sense. I'd highly encourage you to check out an infographic or like a data visualization we did about the number of wallets or active wallets in Bitcoin. I remember Bitcoin wallets are not a huge amount of people. And this is, of course, is wallets on chain, not including exchange wallets. So like people on Binance, people on Coinbase, people on KuCoin, things like that. But it makes a lot of sense that lots of people are in profit. I think now comes the question, as I alluded to in the intro, is do you buy Bitcoin now? Do you continue to buy Bitcoin? And again, the question is, do you want to take that chance, right? Do you believe the hype of $535,000 Bitcoin as Plan B suggested on Twitter? or as other sort of notable crypto personalities have suggested, right? 600,000 Bitcoin, $1 million Bitcoin. People have thrown around some crazy numbers. And if you're a believer, if you believe in the whole digital gold aspect, if you think this is something to hold, if you like the idea of the fixed monetary policy, then maybe this is something you think or you consider about buying at the moment. But yeah, definitely check out this article. As always, what I always suggest to you guys is support the people who write these articles and let me know what you think. Let's move on to today's next story. All right, so Super Tuesday, as I talked about in the intro, is this big political day in the United States, and it's going to affect California, Alabama, Texas. California, for those of you, everyone knows California. No matter where you are in the world, I'm from Africa, I remember California. But California is really special, as well as Texas, because they're like the giant powerhouses of the American GDP. California, of course, for Silicon Valley. Texas also has its own equivalent of Silicon Valley, but also has all that oil and other natural resources. What people are doing in these big states, and I could talk about the politics of this for a while, but I'm not going to, is crypto companies, crypto PACs, crypto organizations are funding pro-crypto candidates. They hope this person wins in this election so that in the future, when crypto legislation comes around, this person will vote, yes, I support this legislation because somebody gave me some money. Not exactly that reason, but so this is going to be interesting, right? And I think we're definitely going to see crypto organizations try to support crypto candidates, not just in the United States, but pretty much everywhere. PACs don't really work, or donations work the same way here in Taiwan. But in other countries, there are rules about companies and organizations donating to particular candidates. But I think crypto organizations definitely are looking for, as we've talked about in Inside Crypto and other past episodes on the 21 Shares channel as well, is that crypto organizations, crypto companies are looking for legal clarity, right? And legal clarity is not going to happen until you have people passing laws. And that doesn't look to be happening at the moment because one side controls half of it or the other side controls half. And when things are in a bit of a deadlock, it's difficult to pass a law. And there's also the other side where it's one side controls the majority and they can pass a law. But if they do, they're also worried about re-election and things like that. So we're going to have to see what happens on Super Tuesday. Let me know what you think. Do you think crypto organizations donating to political candidates is okay? Is it acceptable? Should it not be allowed? It is illegal in some countries. So let me know what you think. And let's move on to today's third story. So today's third story, of course, is Michael Saylor back in the headlines, being the major or the biggest Bitcoin bull in the world. He's going to offer $600 million in convertible notes to buy more Bitcoin. Again, go back, look at our previous short videos. Those can be found on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And yeah, you're going to see lots of Michael Saylor stories. You're going to see probably the biggest one is that MicroStrategy is shifting from being a software company to a Bitcoin software or Bitcoin company. And we've seen that with Jack Dorsey's The Block, I believe it is, or when I say Square, it's not Square, it's The Block, where they're focusing on Bitcoin wallets, they're focusing on other Bitcoin tech, they're focusing on Bitcoin software. So maybe that's what MicroStrategy is going to do. But it looks like Michael Saylor in this instance, or not just in this one, in the last few instances of him offering bonds, offering convertible notes, taking out loans to buy Bitcoin, this continues his long trend of believing Bitcoin is the thing. And you can see the stock ticker over there, MicroStrategy up 23.59%, but the overall pattern is bearish. And I would say is because MicroStrategy doesn't have any real strategy beyond buying Bitcoin, at least from what I see, right? And again, I don't know a huge amount about MicroStrategy, but again, overall really positive for Bitcoin's price and the space, because as they buy more Bitcoin, they can be more vested into the Bitcoin ecosystem, what's happening there. And let's move on to today's second to last story. All right, today's second to last story is BRICS announced a new blockchain-based crypto payment system. So this is a big story by Vinod D'Souza. The BRICS is right, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and we know Russia, China are not on the West's good list as far as Santa Claus is concerned. So this goes into the idea of dollarization or dollars, like, and everything that happens, right, in the global economy is paid for in dollars. And this is wonderful for the American economy in most ways, and it's not great for Russia and China because they need dollars to pay for things. And there's been a third, and Russia, if you've seen headlines, has been using rubles to pay China for oil, or they've been using Chinese yuan to do that, and that's bypassing the dollar system. Of course, the Saudis want to get away from this as well. Instead of the Americans using dollars to pay for oil, they use whatever currency it is. And starting a blockchain ecosystem for these countries that could totally work. It's definitely not a short-term thing. I think getting these large amounts of people like Russia, India, China, South Africa, that's the majority of the world, especially India and China, right? So getting these people on blockchain tech for payments is a massive undertaking. India and China have a huge population, not to mention they're physically big countries, and setting up blockchain-based payment systems like that will take an arm and a leg and much, much more. But I don't think this is going to work because China's economy has huge issues at the moment, and they're worried about their real estate sector. They're worried about various other things. So they set a sort of a goal of 5% GDP growth this year or next year. It's probably this year. But even then, people like that's going to be really difficult to achieve given the fundamental flaws in the current state of their economy. So whether this happens or not, I think more likely than not, but again, this is just my opinion. It's a great idea, but I think it's not realistic. And let's move on to today's last story for today. Today's last story for today is from March 2nd of 2024, charting the global economy. US-Europe inflation stays elevated. Also talks about Asia. As it mentioned, US and EU inflation is elevated. People were hoping for a rate cut this month or next month. It looks like the next rate cut might be May. But when we say elevated, it's elevated by a very small amount. But overall, just as someone who just came back from traveling, travel seems to have bounced back. People are spending money, and spending money is always a good sign for any economy, globally speaking. On the Asian side, inflation is definitely still around, but central banks this side of the world tend to not play around with interest rates too often, just because this sort of impacts people's purchasing power, and people are very sensitive to inflation here. Like, I remember in the last year or so, what hasn't happened, like the price of a haircut in Taiwan used to be about $3, and it didn't change for like almost 9 or 10 years, and it's gone up by $1 or $2. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot for people here. So global inflation is still, I would say it's mostly under control, but there's still, of course, big macroeconomic factors like the ones that I always mention on every freaking episode of this podcast that are still ongoing, and there doesn't seem to be an end in sight. There's also various macroeconomic issues in Europe. There are issues with just within countries themselves about how they're spending, about the debt to GDP ratio. So these are all things I'll let you guys research on your own. But I hope you enjoyed today's episode. These are all the stories we're going to cover for today. Let's end off today's show. We have 2 potential guests for March. The one guest, I'm still going to give him another day or so to confirm it. It might be next week that we record. So next week we might skip a Bitcoin Weekly, or potentially the week after. But ideally, I'm going to aim for a guest next week. I will say guaranteed next week we're not going to have a Bitcoin Weekly. And then we'll continue as always. I hope you guys are enjoying the videos. Don't forget to check out the other channels, right? Check out the 21 Shares channel, which is going to have a reduced video count for the next few weeks until the research team is back on their feet with regards to videos. And yep, so they will do 3 videos a week, right? Of course, we're still doing 1 long video and then 5 shorts a week. Don't forget to check our videos out on Instagram, on Threads, on Facebook, and TikTok as well, okay? Thank you guys as always for tuning in, for supporting us, for liking the content. I always enjoy watching you guys and reading your comments. Some of them may be negative, but it's all good. And then I will talk to you guys later.